He was a very good reporter. He doesn't usually write this way. You can't make it up, he says. Trump was taping a video message for MLK Jr. this afternoon as the story broke about his bleep hole comments. That per Jeff Zeleny, another CNN reporter. So, the president had to interrupt his Martin Luther King commemorative remarks, presumably to tell the White House spokesperson whether or not he really did say that people from Haiti and Africa are from bleep hole countries and he'd prefer Norwegians. I mean, after you make that clarification and the White House spokesperson decides, okay, I guess we're not denying this, then do you go back and finish your MLK Day message? Do you ad-lib a little? That does it for us tonight. We will see you again tomorrow. Now it's time for the last word with Lawrence O'Donnell. Good evening, Lawrence.
Good evening, Rachel. And this is one of those days of parenting in America when the president is teaching little kids a new word. It's a word they're all going to learn at some point in their lives. I don't know. I think I probably learned it in first grade, somewhere around there. But I didn't learn from the president, Rachel. And this is one of the parenting challenges. The kid comes home today and says, "Mommy, what does this mean?"
You know, one of the pieces of trivia that survived through the years about Richard Nixon and the way the president viewed his behavior as president in the Oval Office was that he once said that he didn't give, on a White House tape, he didn't give a bleep about the lira, about the Italian currency, or talking about monetary issues. And that was an object of shock and disgust across the country, that the president would say that he didn't give a bleep about a foreign currency. And now, I mean, does Nixon get whitewashed in retrospect because he gets contrasted to what we're now having to report tonight? It's just...
Well, every president can thank Donald Trump for making every one of them look a little better in some way.
Exactly.
By the way he conducts himself.
Recalibrating it. That's right. Thanks
Rachel.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, they went to make a deal with the devil, and they discovered two things. He wasn't ready to make a deal, but he really is the devil. That's what happened when three senators went to see the president today at the White House. Republican Lindsey Graham, Democrat Dick Durbin, Republican Tom Cotton reached a bipartisan agreement on an immigration deal that would continue the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program known as DACA and include a token amount of money for border security, about $2 million, and make other adjustments to the rules for visas. This would be a routine White House meeting for any other president, but routine is impossible for the current president. A week after the country has been considering the new details about the president's utter inability to process information, to understand what is being said to him, as revealed in Michael Wolff's new book about the inside workings of the Trump White House. The president once again proved the book to be correct about him, as he has done every other day this week in a variety of ways. One of the now undeniable facts laid out in Michael Wolff's new book is that because Donald Trump can't comprehend what people are saying, he agrees with the last thing he hears people say. We all saw that on display for an hour in the cabinet room this week when the president did exactly that on immigration. He agreed with the Democrat and then immediately agreed with the Republican after the Republican interrupts the president to say he does not think the president thinks what the president just said he thinks. We saw Republican Kevin McCarthy do that on television after the president agreed with Senator Dianne Feinstein that they should just pass a clean DACA bill. And Kevin McCarthy had to interrupt and stop the president and turn him back around to the Republican position. The White House staff knew that Donald Trump could not be trusted today in a meeting with Lindsey Graham and Dick Durbin and Tom Cotton. The senators thought that they were going to a meeting with the president to present the Senate's position on this legislation. Perfectly standard Senate meeting with the president. When the senators got to the White House, they found they were wildly outnumbered by hardline members of the Republican Party and from the House of Representatives, including Kevin McCarthy and some of the other people who had to turn the president around in the cabinet room the other day on television. There has never been a meeting like that in the White House before. With that kind of imbalance, one Democrat against 6 Republicans, 7 if you count Donald Trump. That's what the White House staff decided they needed to handle the presence of one senator, one Democratic senator, Senator Dick Durbin. They needed 7-on-1 because they knew Donald Trump is no match for Dick Durbin. The White House staff loaded up that room with Republicans. That meeting was structured that way precisely because of Donald Trump's incompetence and declining mental ability that you can read about in Michael Wolff's book. The White House knew that the president couldn't possibly handle himself in that meeting, so they had to bring in Kevin McCarthy to be the president's brain, to tell the president what to think, because the president does not think. But the president feels. Hatred is a feeling. And tonight, we have a new window into the president's feelings, the president's hatreds. Another piece to add to that mosaic of racism that describes Donald Trump and his father ever since his father was arrested at a Ku Klux Klan meeting in New York City before Donald Trump was born. When they were in the real estate business together, father and son were caught by the Justice Department using racist practices to prevent black people from renting apartments, something that people who have worked for the Trumps have described in detail. There has always been a stain of racism on the Trump name, a stain the president cannot wash off because he has never tried to. Today in the White House, when the discussion turned to the details of immigration from Haiti and African countries, the President of the United States said, "Why are we having all of these people from shithole countries come here? My people came from what Donald Trump would call a shithole country. No running water, no plumbing, no toilets, rampant poverty, disease, and famine. That was the Ireland that my ancestors left to come here just so they could eat. That was back when Trump's family name was still Drumpf, and they lived in what Donald Trump would call a shithole country. Donald Trump doesn't know what he comes from, but he knows just enough about it that he knew he needed to lie about it. He and his father used to lie and say that they were from Swedish ancestry after World War II made them a bit uncomfortable with their German ancestry as they were trying to do business in New York City. Donald Trump knows nothing about where we all came from, and he is a man consumed by hatreds, and we can see him consumed by hatreds every day. Individual hatreds, like his newfound hatred of Steve Bannon, as well as group hatreds from Mexicans to Muslims. And so hating countries is second nature to Donald Trump. Hating is what he does. There are 54 African countries. Donald Trump surely cannot name more than 2 of them. But he knows what he thinks about all of them. Every country in Africa, and he said that today. It's not the first time we got a look into this poison section of the president's brain, the president's failing brain. And I say failing brain because it is a brain that fails public intelligence tests every single day. It may also be failing for medical or other reasons, but it fails right before our eyes every day, which is why the lead editorial of the New York Times today is Mr. Trump nuts? The New York Times has never considered such a question about a president of the United States before, and tonight the New York Times has even more reason to raise that issue. But none of us can claim to be surprised by what Donald Trump said today because he's said it all before in various ways. Last year, the New York Times quoted the president saying this about Haitians: "They all have AIDS." In that same article, the New York Times quoted the president as saying this about the people who come to the United States from Nigeria: "Once they had seen the United States, they would never go back to their huts in Africa," recalled the 2 officials who asked for anonymity to discuss a sensitive conversation in the Oval Office. Here are the huts in Africa that he was talking about. That's Nigeria. Nigeria is one of Africa's 2 richest countries. You can live a full 21st century lifestyle in Nigeria. But Nigeria, like the United States, also has extreme poverty, as do all African countries. Donald Trump has never been there, so he thinks there's nothing but poverty there, nothing but huts. That was the raging ignoramus accurately depicted in Michael Wolff's new book, saying that anyone who came to the United States would never, from Africa, would never go back to their huts in Africa. Barack Obama's father was born in Kenya, educated in Kenya, came to the United States where he pursued graduate studies at Harvard and became more educated than Donald Trump and Donald Trump's children. And one of the great personal pains of Barack Obama's childhood and life is that his father did indeed go back to Africa, to Kenya, and luckily for us, for the United States, he left his son here. And that son of that temporary immigrant from a country that Donald Trump hates became president of the United States, and that has always been the unique story of the United States. We never know where greatness is coming from. We never know which country greatness is coming from. The leak of the president's hateful comment today was credited to a Democratic source, and we know there was only one Democratic senator in the room when he said that, but Senator Durbin probably had at least one Democratic staffer in the room with him. And that does not mean that Senator Durbin or his staffer leaked it directly to the press. One of them could have said it to another senator in astonishment, or to several other senators or several other staffers when they got back to the Senate, and then anyone could have leaked it to the press. But the quote has been effectively confirmed by the White House itself tonight, which released a statement in response to the leak, which did not deny that the president said it. And none of the 6 Republicans in the room who witnessed the president saying that has come forward to deny that the president said that. And that is confirmation that he said it. If he did not say those words, Lindsey Graham would have run to a microphone to denounce the leak as absolutely false. And of course, Lindsey Graham knows that the president said those words. And of course, Lindsey Graham was not surprised, could not be surprised. He's been around Donald Trump enough. He's been watching him enough. Good and decent people in America and around the world are sickened by what the president said tonight, but no one who has been paying attention to who Donald Trump really is, no one who has been paying attention to that man could possibly be surprised by what he said today. And no one who went into that room today to make a deal with the devil could be surprised to hear him sounding like the devil. Joining us now, Nicholas Kristof, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Times. Also with us, Brian Klaas. Brian is a fellow with global politics at the London School of Economics and the author of Despot's Apprentice, Donald Trump's Attack on Democracy. And Karine Jean-Pierre, senior advisor and national spokesperson for MoveOn.org. Karine, I want to begin with you because your country, the country you're from, Haiti, was attacked by the president in the cruelest possible language today. And I really am out of words about what to say about this, and I'd just like to go to you first for your reaction.
Yeah, Lawrence, it's been almost 365 days since his inauguration, and it's continuously all of us being out of words because of what Donald Trump has done in the Oval Office and with his presidency. Look, I mean, what we heard today, the comments we heard today is just proves what we have known for a long time, that the man who occupies the Oval Office, the man who is supposed to be the president of the United States, who sits behind the Resolute desk, is indeed a racist. And we've known that for a long time. I mean, sadly for us, this is nothing new. We have to remember, he started his business career as a racist. He started his political career as a racist. And he started the White House, went into the White House as a racist. And he is someone who is a racist and will always be a racist. This is somebody who wanted to ban Muslim, who called Mexicans rapists, who believes that neo-Nazis are good people, fine people. I mean, this is a man that continues to show that he is not qualified to serve as president of the United States. And yet again, he gives us an example today and almost every day. But here's something, Lawrence, I want to give a call to action here. In a couple of days, it's going to be, we're going to be observing Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. And as we know, this is someone who gave his life for the civil rights movement. And this is also someone who said there is a time when silence is also betrayal. And I want to say this, we cannot be silent right now. We need to continue to fight. Because we know that Donald Trump is going to continue to betray us, we have to stand up, speak up, take to the street, protest, call your elected officials, and more importantly, this year we have to vote in primaries and also vote in the general election. We all need to be outraged here. This should not be a partisan issue. This should be a Republican, independent, and Democratic issue. People should care about this because we all should be outraged. We can't allow the Donald Trump's administration to continue this. Donald Trump himself to continue this type of racist, bigoted behavior that he continues to show over and over again without any shame.
Here is the reaction from Republican Congresswoman Mia Love of Utah. She released this statement tonight. The president's comments are unkind, divisive, elitist, and fly in the face of our nation's values. This behavior is unacceptable from the leader of our nation. My parents came from one of those countries, took an oath of allegiance to it, and took on the responsibility of everything that being a citizen comes with. They never took a thing from our federal government. They worked hard, paid taxes, and rose from nothing to take care of and provide opportunities for their children. They taught their children to do the same. That's the American dream. The president must apologize to both the American people and the nations he so wantonly maligned. And Nick Kristof, Mia Love's been paying attention to this president. She has no doubt that he said that.
Well, I mean, I think we owe an apology to people of those countries because, I mean, it is not only racist and bigoted and offensive, it's also flat wrong. There are more Ethiopian doctors in America than there are in Ethiopia. You're serving us. There are people from all of these countries who gave their lives in the American Armed Services, who were buried at Arlington. And it's not only racist and offensive and wrong, it's also hypocritical because, indeed, when Donald Trump's grandfather came to the U.S. in 1885 as a 16-year-old kid who was uneducated, untrained, was looked down on by people partly, which is why he went off to the Klondike and ended up starting a restaurant/hotel and apparently /brothel as well. There were plenty of people looking down on them, as there were on your family, on my family of Polish Armenians. But at the end of the day, immigration is what has made this country so extraordinary. It's a source of strength. And I think Trump is not only betraying that heritage with these offensive comments, he's betraying his family heritage and America's heritage.
Brian, your reaction?
Well, I'd echo everything that's been said. This is disgusting, racist, unpresidential, and wrong. But in addition to that, I think we have to understand how much the president's words matter overseas. This is the top story on the BBC. This is the top story around the world. And African countries are not going to forget this. This might be a 2 or 3 day story before Trump shocks us again here. But it doesn't become a 2 or 3 day story in Africa. And when we need those countries to cooperate with us in counterterrorism, which is an emerging threat, or we have alliances in the African continent that are important for our geostrategy, they're not going to forget this comment. And so I think, the same thing happened when Trump retweeted neo-fascists in Britain. It was a one-day story here. It damaged the relationship that is so critical to our security and our prosperity in this country. And it's reflective of who Trump is on the world stage. I think I live in London, and the president represents Americans to the rest of the world. Nobody else does. They're not seeing the dissent. They're seeing the president's remarks and thinking this is what America stands for. And that's why I'd echo that call to action. If this is not what you stand for, make sure that there is another message sent to the world in November.
Karine, what do you make of Mia Love's demand that the president apologize? Here's a Republican congresswoman saying the president must apologize to both the American people and the nations he so wantonly maligned.
I'm glad that she said that, but he's not going to apologize. This is not the first racist, bigoted thing that Donald Trump has said. He's been saying racist, bigoted things for decades. And when he jumped into the political arena, he went after the president of the United States at that time, which was Barack Obama, and was the grand wizard of birtherism. He doesn't care. He's not going to apologize. It is up to us in November. It's up to independents, Democrats, and Republicans to really make make a loud noise by voting in November. And that is the only way we're going to be able to stop this, because Republicans leadership on the Hill certainly don't care. They are allowing this over and over again. Look, you said something early on in this on your show, at the top of your show, Lawrence, about your kids and about kids. How do we talk to our kids? This is the thing that bothers me all the time. I have a young toddler, and what do we say to our young people who are growing up and watching this? And I feel like I'm everything that Donald Trump hates. Literally every ism that Donald Trump hates, I am that. And so I just don't understand how we cannot stand up and speak against this. We have to take to the streets. We have to call our elected officials, and we have to push back on this every way that we can.
We'll see if the Democrats agree to any further discussions with the president about this subject until he apologizes. Demanding the apology could be a first stage demand for Democrats. Nick, quickly, I just want to go to another geopolitical issue here. As you know, the Chinese are very active in Africa, in all sorts of development projects in Africa. They take Africa very seriously. This is the United States' biggest emerging rival on the planet, the Chinese, and rival as a sphere of influence. And here we have the President of the United States simply referring to Africa as this kind of place with his kind of language that it's hateful to him. He has nothing to do with it, just hates everything about it. And the Chinese are in there doing business. Good day for the Chinese.
It is indeed. And I mean, China essentially, in competing for these countries, it offers infrastructure investments. And what the U.S. has offered in part has been our soft power, our culture, our democracy, our history, that people truly admire. And we just took a bludgeon to our soft power in Africa and indeed, in many other countries around the world.
Brian, talk about that for a moment, because I don't think that's something that this White House has been able to get into the president's head at all. Why the Chinese are so interested in Africa in a way that Donald Trump isn't.
Well, it's the emerging frontier for geopolitics. I mean, it's the place where there is huge growth. Some of the highest growth countries are in Africa. And also you have security concerns, right? There's hugely geostrategically important places in Africa. The Sahel is a place where there's important counterterrorism interests also on the Horn of Africa. So, the U.S. has interest there. And the question is, what is this going to do to us down the road? And that's why I say, China is outplaying us. They're beating us. And Trump is just giving them a gift today and making it so easy for African leaders to say, you know what? We don't want to be part of this. We're not going to be with the United States. And in my travels in Africa, I've seen a huge amount of people who admire the United States. I don't know if that's going to be the same thing in 5 or 10 years if we continue to have this rhetoric come from the Oval Office unchecked.
Yeah, in addition to delivering a personal and vicious message of hatred to millions of people around the world and in the United States, he delivered a gift to the Chinese today, the president did. Brian Klaas and Karine Jean-Pierre, thank you both for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Lauren.
Coming up, President Trump and Steve Bannon appear to now be in all-out war with each other. We will see what happens if it is televised next week when Steve Bannon appears at the House Intelligence Committee. Just how terrified should the president be of Steve Bannon tonight? And later, one of the strangest lies Donald Trump told just this week. We're going to take apart that lie as we take apart the pieces of the president's brain that assembled that lie.